our parents, our boys, our girls, everyone in social media. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Ministry of Education and Youth. We are happy to have you at our Parent Town Hall, where we are continuing the conversation with you, our parents, as we get ready for the full reopening of our schools. But before we go any further, we're going to just invite the presence of God in our midst. So just pray with me in social media, as those in the room will also get in reverence with prayer. Let us all pray. Mighty God and our everlasting Father, you are our Prince of Peace. We thank you, mighty God, for this opportunity to converse with our parents, with our key stakeholders in education. Mighty God, I know you have a special place in your heart for Jamaica land we love. We thank you for the opportunity that you have given us to get our students back into their learning environment. You have created them for excellence, and you have given us charge over the opportunities to enable them to shine and to become their best. We thank you for being with us this evening. We ask, oh God, for your continued leadership, wisdom, and guidance as we navigate this conversation. Have your own way as we continue to give you thanks and to continue to glorify your holy name. Amen and amen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to have a lovely, light conversation with you this evening. We want to hear from you. We have in the room our minister, our permanent secretary. We have in the social space the Minister of Health, and we have our permanent secretary who is here to give the formal welcome. So I'm going to jump over to her just to do the warm welcome and to set the stage for our conversation. Permanent Secretary, over to you.
Thank you, moderator. Honorable Fable Williams, our Minister of Education and Youth. The Honorable Dr. Christopher Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness, online. Dr. Cassan Troop, our Chief Education Officer acting. Mr. Cecil Toms, our Corporate Communications Manager at JUTC, online with us. Members of staff of the Ministry of Education and Youth who have joined us online, our parents, our teachers, members of the media, welcome to our virtual town hall. We, this afternoon, are here to discuss our own business, which is the resumption of school in a full face-to-face mode. We welcome you and we look forward to your comments and your participation in this lively discussion this afternoon. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you so much, PS. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our parents. Welcome to our caregivers. Let me acknowledge the Honorable Dr. Christopher Tufton, Minister of Health and Wellness, who is joining us. Thank you so much. Our PS, Mrs. Maureen Dwyer, our Chief Education Officer, Dr. Troop, and of course, thank you, Mr. Cecil Toms from Corporate Communications at JUTC for joining us this afternoon. So parents, Monday is a big turning point in the education sector. As you know, all our students are required to be back in the face-to-face environment. We know that this is yet another transition from being in the COVID-19 pandemic when we've had to use different modalities and to have our children, some in school at one time, some at home and so on. So we're transitioning to a new phase in terms of our students being back fully into the face-to-face environment. We know that there are going to be challenges. Your students have been out for almost 2 years as they get back into the school environment. I know they'll be excited, but there might be challenges for them, for you, for us. We seek your patience as we work through these days. We want to do the best for our students, but we need you to hold hands with us as we go through this period to get our children back to where they were before the pandemic in terms of their education, but also to move them beyond that because they would have missed quite a lot of time during the pandemic. Thank you. I look forward to the questions that you may have, to the interaction that we will have this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your remarks. So there you have it, parents. This is really about you. We want to hear from you. You know, we are trying our very best to get our students back, and I know you want that too. And we have been navigating a health crisis, and so as part of this conversation, we have the Minister of Health, Dr. Tufton, with us, who is going to chime in from social space to just share with you some of the things to remember as we try to get ourselves back and as we try to remain safe. So, Minister Tufton, over to you as you try to update our key stakeholders, our parents. I know they want to hear from you, and we now turn over to you for your intervention.
Thank you very much. And let me just recognize, of course, my colleague, Minister and friend, Minister Favour Williams, and her team. They're on stage, and I'm sure the support team that's elsewhere. To the parents, guardians, or well-wishers of students and the education system, let me just say good evening to you all. Sorry I can't spend the entire time with you. The minister knows that I had a prior engagement, but I really wanted to be here to share with the parents in particular, and to give full 100% support to the minister and the Ministry of Education in terms of the work that has been taking place leading up to the full resumption of back to school or face-to-face school in another number of days. Firstly, we have come a long way in the COVID response, the COVID fight. This has been 2 years. Represents 2 years to the day. The first case of COVID came to Jamaica or was diagnosed and announced. And March, a year to date, represents the first year after the first vaccine was administered. So it's been a really rough journey. It's been a real challenges, and side effects of that have been our students being required for the most part during this period to stay home and to benefit from online classes for the most part. Now, as we all know, this has come with significant consequences. In fact, in public health, we see as one of the biggest side effects, if you will, is the impact of the kids or students or children staying home over this period, the impact on their learning, huge challenge, because they have been separate as part of their development and evolution. And to a large extent, while it can be argued that we never had much of a choice because we needed to protect them and to protect the older ones that they go home to because of the virus and the nature of the virus, I don't think today the circumstances are the same. Much has changed. There are many of our population that have been vaccinated. There are many who have gone through COVID, had the experience. There are many lessons that we have learned in terms of controlling the virus, the sanitizing, the distancing, all the other critical protocols that we have learned from. So today represents 2 years on a much different period. And the upside to that is that we are a lot more aware of the response that we can give to our students and to the school environment. The downside, of course, is that restrictions over that long period has been very negative to the students. So we are in public health and as part of government, very supportive of the work that the Ministry of Education has been doing. The minister and her team have met with us on several occasions. We have put protocols in place around the school environment, the public education of the critical teams, in the school setting, the teachers, the support staff, the need for the school to have critical infrastructure, the wash stations, the sanitization stations, the messaging around how to go about interacting, the mask wearing. We do know that the social distancing is going to be a problem, meaning a challenge, because you clearly, once you have all back, you won't have in many cases, the space to keep people apart, and children will always be children. They will play, they will enjoy themselves and so on. But the other measures that we have put in place, we believe, to support our children, I believe, is an excellent countermeasure to what we believe the social distancing may not, to the extent it may not be practical. All that has happened over the last 2 years has prepared us for this day. And I'm very convinced, I'm very, supportive of the decision, because I do believe that our children need the face-to-face, and I believe we're adequately prepared for it. The final thing I'll say is that we are committed in public health to work with the team on the ground, the ministry. The minister and I will continue the dialogue after the resumption of face-to-face. We will visit the schools. I certainly will do too. We will adjust as we need to go along in terms of if there's anything that, that may come up that requires some pivoting or some adjustments. We will take it on a case-by-case basis. We will adjust in a particular school environment where necessary. So we understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all. We understand that it's not going to be the same circumstances in every school, in every environment, but we are committed to beating back COVID, committed to learning the lessons from COVID to date, and committed to getting our children back so that they can learn and their development can continue. Because if we don't, then we're going to be faced with a bigger problem later on. So while I do agree that COVID is still with us, I am also very optimistic that living with COVID is a lot easier to do now than it was 2 years ago or a year ago. It's easier because vaccine.
Oh my God. I think we lost Minister Tufton there. We lost him. We may
Nation, you're not here? You're hearing me?
You're back.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. But I'm not sure where you lost me, but I'm just saying that it's a much easier prospect to manage the COVID response 2 years on, having learned the lessons of COVID. And we are committed to working with Minister Favour Williams and her team to ensure that it works. So I came on with the minister to give her my full support and to say to parents, from public health standpoint, we are committed. We think that the students need the face-to-face, and we believe that the measures that we have taken and will take where necessary will give them the best possible protection. And we believe that it outweighs the risk and consequences to them by keeping them at home and keeping them out of that face-to-face interaction, which is so valuable. Thank you very much, and I hand back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tufton. You made an important point. We have to live with COVID. But most importantly, we have the experience of the last 2 years. So it's not new to us. We have had trial and errors. We have done things great. We have had new learning. And so we are not starting from scratch. So yes, parents, we are living with COVID. We are moving on. We are being resilient at this time in our system, and we need your support. So in addition to that reassurance that you got from our Minister of Health, we have to treat with the transportation matters as well. And so we have Mr. Cecil Thoms from the JUTC, who is here to just talk to us about what is prepared for us to treat with back to school, what kind of support, what you can expect as you get your children out next week. So Mr. Thoms, over to you.
Good evening to you, Madam Chair, and good evening to all the panelists. Let me acknowledge the Education Minister Favour Williams and her team, as well as the Health Minister, Dr. Christopher Tufton, principals and teachers who may be online, good evening to you. Well, the Jamaica Urban Transit Company, the JUTC, is always at this time prepared to meet capacity. And usually at this time, it is our standard operating procedure to ramp up our maintenance program. I'd like to mention at least three things that we are doing to meet capacity for Monday, when we expect that there will be significant crowd and students turning up for school. The first thing is that we are using our articulated buses, which we call the double bus, which has a capacity to move twice as much the crowd, or twice as much of the crowd in respect to our regular units. We think that this will be able to mitigate any crowding that may take place within the KMTR. The second thing that we're doing is that we're also bringing back into operation a number of the buses that have been down so that we can increase the fleet numbers. I do believe that a lot of people and persons who are online and persons who generally take the JUTC are aware that our fleet numbers are low. And so we are doing everything that is possible within the resources that we have to meet the demand. Of course, the long-term strategy is that we have been given a commitment by the government that within the next, or should I say, within the latter part of this year, we're hoping that in the third or fourth quarter of this year, that we will get an additional 50 buses that will in fact beef up fleet numbers. As you are also aware, the JUTC has a partnership with our sub-franchise operators, and those sub-franchise operators are those smaller coaster bus type units that students are able to take as well, but the fare structure may be a little bit different in comparison to what the JUTC offers. There's also the train service that came into effect earlier this year. Students from Old Harbor and Linstead are able to travel. And of course, when they get into Spanish Town, the JUTC is able to facilitate them by taking them to their respective schools. So that is what we are doing. We know that come Monday, there will be some amount of delays. We're asking, parents and students to be out early to secure their seats and to just bear with us as we work out the details of a challenging situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Toms. We are so happy to have you on board. We cannot do this without you. Our children are relying on your services. So I'm happy to see that you have taken some steps to assist our parents in getting our students out on time. The articulated buses, you're going to be increasing your fleet, you're going to be working with your sub-franchise officers and so forth. So thank you so much. This is the kind of interministerial support, Minister, that we want when we treat with this kind of situation. It's a big move for the education system, but we do believe we are ready for this. But we also have Mr. Richard Troop online. He's our National Safety and Security Coordinator, and we want to have him update us also, give our parents some more details with respect to our partnership with the rail service, also what we have been doing with the Montego Bay Metro team that I know you have been having several conversations with, just to make sure that the transportation support, is sure up and available for our parents and students. So Mr. Troop, over to you. Let us share with our parents what we are doing. And in the same breath, Mr. Troop, just to update on the yard-to-yard child find, where we are with that. That's an important initiative that the ministry launched to find our students. We are aware that some of our students have been detached, but this is the opportunity that we have launched to find those students, and I would like you also to give a quick update on that to our parents. Mr. Troop, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Troop, Honorable Favour Williams, Honorable Dr. Christopher Tufton, our Permanent Secretary Acting, Mrs. Maureen Dwyer. Good afternoon to you all, and good afternoon to our very important persons who have joined us this afternoon, our parents. The conversation is with you and for you. And so with specific reference to the ministry support in terms of transportation support to PATH students and some needy students who are not children on PATH. So we have our rural transportation program. This program will be going on for 5 consecutive years. For this year, we are committed as a Ministry of Education to provide transportation subsidy to 7,500 children at the primary and high school level and 2 special ed institutions across 13 parishes. The program will seek to engage, of course, JUTC through its urban-rural program in sections of Clarendon, Montego Bay Metro in the western end of the island. Our newest partner on the block, the Jamaica Railway Service. I will speak to that in a little bit time, but also we are also engaging private bus operators. Now, through this program, I would have indicated 7,000 children on PATH and other needy students will benefit. Predominantly, the majority of the students who benefit from this program are from rural parishes. We do understand that in most rural parishes, children and the commuting public do not benefit from Montego Bay Metro. The cost of transportation is significantly higher in these spaces, and that's hence the reason why the ministry would have conceptualized this program that would have been going on for 5 years straight. For the passenger rail service, and that is the newest modality of transportation that would have been incorporated in our rural bus program. 6 St. Catherine-based schools are engaged in this pilot project. Roughly 850 children would have benefited from a access card. And so while at this time we do not have brand new trains and it is the old time train we are still using, we have actually utilized technology to support us in this program in the context that it is a cashless service. So our boys and girls will travel from Linstead and Old Harbour to Spanish Town at a much greater reduced cost. The cost actually is $100, $70 on the train from Linstead or Old Harbour to Spanish Town. And Cecil would have indicated that we would have also engaged JUTC to provide a shuttle service for 3 of the St. Catherine-based high school to transport the children from the bus station to the respective schools. Now, in terms of our yard-to-yard Find a Child initiative, approximately 120,000 of our boys and girls parents, would not have been engaged in any of the remote modalities of learning. Many because they did not have the technological device, they did not have access to internet, they did not have access to data. Many of the boys and girls who had access to these particular items also struggled with being online. That's why we're very grateful that we are now back fully to in-person classes. Since we would have launched our yard-to-yard Find a Child initiative, approximately 40,000 of those boys and girls have been re-engaged back to our school system. We have been working with our school-based team. The school-based team continue to work very hard to identify, locate, and re-engage our boys and girls. But under the yard-to-yard Find a Child initiative parents, we would have engaged 108 social workers on a part-time basis and 580 youth workers to support our school-based team to identify, locate, and re-engage our boys and girls. We still have somewhere to go. I mean, we have not yet reaped the kind of success that we would want to have reaped at this time. We are anticipating that, Dr. Troop, as we resume again to in-person classes for everyone, we would have seen a greater level of engagement. But I'm going to use this opportunity to say to our parents online that this is not just the responsibility of the Ministry of Education to find our boys and girls and get them back in school. It's really a call to action for every Jamaican, concerned Jamaican citizen who must understand that we too have an individual and a collective responsibility to support this effort. So if it is that in your community, you see boys and girls who are of school age, should be in school, not in school, we ask you to reach out to those children, reach out to the family to see if there might be a situation that is preventing. Find out from those boys and girls the school that they belong to, reach out to these schools that they belong to so that we can get in touch with our children. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that every single Jamaican child have access to education. And so as we go back, Dr. Troop, to in-person classes, we are encouraging all of our parents online. Do not only be concerned about your child, your children, but how do we as concerned Jamaicans, as concerned parents, also ensure that we are reaching out to our neighbor's child, a child in the community who might not so be blessed with the resources to come back to school in the way that we would want them to. But with your intervention, it could make a big difference. So colleagues and parents, we really welcome your support at this time. And thank you very much, for the numbers we're seeing online. It is showing that you are very interested in playing your role in supporting a process for all of our nation's children to be back in school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Troop. You have said it well.
Yes.
A call to action.
action.
It's a
Yes,
national call to action.
Definitely, yes.
That's the kind of conversation we're having this evening to our Jamaicans in social spaces all over Jamaica. Whether you're on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, you're all out there. And we're just asking you to just respond to that call. We all have a role to play as we get our students back in the learning environment. And so you have heard from Mr. Troop. The ministry has invested significant sums of monies. We have invested, Minister, $380 million into this rural transportation program to help our students to get to school and to increase their attendance at schools, because we know the value of time and task. And so we continue to do that. We have worked with our partners, JUTC, the Jamaica Rail Service, Montego Bay Metro. We have been looking at our private partnerships because we have been working through our schools to look at local partners that we can enroll in the program to support our students and get them to school safely. So we are really trying here from the Ministry of Education, and therefore, again, I reiterate, this is a national call to action. Minister, I've heard that we have some questions online and so forth, but before I go to that, I just want to turn to you to see if you want to, shore up that call some more and help our parents to understand what we are up against.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. Yes, parents, you've heard it from the Minister of Health and Wellness. You've heard it from the JUTC in terms of transportation, Mr. Troop in terms of what he's doing with the yard-to-yard find to get our children back and engage in their education. Yes, Monday, March 7, we are expecting all of our students to be back in the face-to-face environment. We have done some work here at the ministry. In preparation for the resumption, we would have given schools some additional financial support so that they are able to replenish their stock of sanitizers and to be able to get any furniture, especially the high schools. The Ministry of Education and Youth will continue to deliver desks and chairs to our primary schools, but we are putting additional resources out there. We would have distributed 5,000 e-COVID test kits, and we are getting ready to add some more to the system, because even though the 5,000 number sounds like a big number, when you think about all our schools, one school may not get a big amount. So we're looking to purchase additional COVID test kits. Additionally, we are at, today, next week, We'll be sending out 400,000 masks into our schools to help our students. We know that there are concerns, some anxieties about the physical distancing, and you would have heard the health minister talk about that. Yes, when your students go back, when your children go back to school, they will be in a classroom with all their classmates, and they might not be sitting 3 feet or 6 feet apart from each other. And we recognize that that is the situation. We're asking, we're pleading, we're encouraging the students to continue to wear their masks in the classroom. I know that you are already used to taking their temperature coming in through the gate at the school, to ensuring you have your mask on, and to get some sanitization at entrance. And this should be for everyone coming onto the school ground. There should be no exception in terms of the mask wearing, temperature checks, and the sanitization. We know that there will be many students lined up at the gate to get their temperatures taken. And so there's some relaxation of the rules there, whereas you might have been used to somebody writing down the name of the child and the temperature. We have indicated to our schools that it's okay just to take the temperature. You don't have to record every single name of every single child and the temperature. Just when you take, when you put that thermometer on and you take the reading, look at it and make sure that it is within the normal range. If it's 38 degrees Celsius or above, we have a situation, and that child would need to be pulled out and taken to the isolation center, the isolation room at the school. And all the schools that are going to be back in the face-to-face environment have isolation centers. That's a requirement for them to have gotten a satisfactory review from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We know that some cafeterias or canteens will be open. We ask the students, to try not to crowd the place. We know that sometimes they only get a certain number of minutes to get there, and as best as possible, we're asking you to be as orderly as possible in order to do so. We want to leave a lot of time for you to ask questions, but before we do, I want to remind you that we will be in the school environment that requires your children to turn up in their uniforms and to turn up well groomed as well. We seek your patience as you take your children back to school. Remember that the teachers and the administrators at the school leaders, they're under pressure as well. It's a new environment for everyone. Yes, we were in the blended environment and some children were at school, but now it's everybody that's going to be there. A lot of our children would have been in an environment in which they were independent. They woke up when they wanted to. They may or may not get onto the online class and so on. They're coming back now in a structured environment, again, where rules are required. We want you to encourage them to be on their best behavior in school, not just in school, actually, on their way to school and back home from school. And we're asking you to be there, to be that support for them as they step out once again into the face-to-face environment. I know as well there are many of you that might be parents that are getting PATH benefits. That is another area that we will be looking at. I'll ask Dr. Troop to talk about that when she comes back on, as to how that's going to work now that all the students will be back in the face-to-face environment. In our systems, in the education sector, we do have still, unfortunately, some shift schools. Those face unique challenges, and we would have spoken to the principals today, and those schools, the shift schools, they have a little leeway in terms of over the next 2 weeks how they organize to get the students back. So again, parents, I want to alert you to that, so that if the principal gives you instructions, bear in mind that the ministry would have given them the okay for that window of time to sort out the shifts and to accommodate all our children back in school. So as was said earlier on, it's a collective responsibility. It's all of us, all of Jamaica, that we have to come together now to help our children as they get back into the learning, the physical learning environment, to ensure that they are safe on the way to school and back, and to be safe while they're in the school environment. It's going to require patience from all of us, from teachers, from parents, principals, from the transport, the taxi that they have to take or the bus that they have to take. It's going to require patience on all sides to help them to transition back into this environment. Recall that some of our students, especially our grade 7 to 9, they would have transitioned to high school in the virtual world. And so they're not used to the environment just fully just yet. So you're going to hear me say the word patience many, many times, but that's going to be required of all of us as we transition into the full face-to-face mode. Thank you. I look forward to the questions that you may have.
Thank you, Minister, for just reassuring our parents that we understand the fears, we understand the concerns, but we are working with you. And as Minister said earlier, there are some schools, our shift schools, you know them, your children are registered in these schools. The principals might have said to you that not everyone can be in for Monday. That is something that we are aware of, and so we're asking you to work with them. They are not breaching any rules. There are some particular challenges at this time with space, as you know. So we have given them an additional 2 weeks to work that through. So we're asking you parents to just work along with your principals and your teachers. Don't just have the students turn up knowing full well that something else was communicated to you, given the 2 weeks window that we have given our school leaders at this time. So I understand that some questions are in the chat, and we have some persons who have raised their hands. As per usual, you are in the Zoom space, so you just indicate by raising your hand, and we will give you a nudge to unmute. And so we will call your name, ask you to unmute. You will do so and pose your question. So I have my technical team member, Ms. Thompson, who is going to call on you as she identifies you lined up in the platform, right?
So this question is from Facebook. What measures are being taken with transportation to support students outside of the JUT bus routes, for example, in the rural areas?
Okay, so Mr. Troop is in the social space, and he's going to be helping me with that. But since the COVID, we started a series of conversations with our transportation providers. And so a number of persons have been working with our school leaders to apply the different routes to make sure that support is provided on those routes. I know that many of our principals have been working with our transportation providers in their context, and some kind of relationships have been established, and persons are working with the schools. Those schools with school buses, principals have made those buses available as well. So I'm going to ask you parents, just get in touch with your principals. They will share with you the schedule that they have available to support the movement of students. But I'm going to go over to Mr. Troop. You're still with us. Just kind of give some more updates and those intimate conversations with the different rural providers.
Yes. So great question. And I would have mentioned earlier, Dr. Troop, under our rural school bus program, 7,500 children on part and other needy students will be benefiting from a partnership that we would have established with either JUTC, Montego Bay Metro, or a rail service, or private contractors. Might I pause to just acknowledge the tremendous support that we would have benefited from the partnership with the private contractors. These individuals understand the importance of ensuring that children travel to school in a reliable, using a reliable mode of transport. Also, more importantly, travel to school safely. The ministry did not create this particular project out of the air. We would have been guided by existing partnerships that we would have seen with in other schools where parents and the school and private operators would have engaged in a partnership to transport children safely to school. We would have borrowed that model, replicated that model to ensure that children on part also benefit from this kind of service. Now, 7,500 children is a drop in the bucket, parents, and we do understand that. Dr. Troop would have indicated that even though it's 7,500 children, we are talking about a commitment of $380 million. How do we break down that amount? For every child at the primary school level, the subsidy that is provided for at least 30 weeks would be $37,500. And for children at the high school level, that subsidy grant works out to $56,250. Now, of course, we would say to our parents and to our students and parents, I'm saying it to you today too, we have to ensure that our students understand that they have a personal responsibility for their own safety when they are utilizing public transport. Too often we see students wait on special bus. Too often we see students after school, instead of boarding the bus, they are lining in the plazas, they are lining in the town centers. Now is not the time that we continue with those pre-COVID behavior. We have to ensure that as parents, you are sitting down your children, irrespective of their age, to remind them of their personal responsibility. This morning, we had a conversation, Dr. Troop, with the National Deans of Discipline Association, the Community Safety and Security Branch, and ourselves, the Ministry of Education, Safety and Security in Schools Unit. And one of the things we did mention in that meeting this morning is a recognition that children at this time, more than ever, might also be vulnerable to those persons who will want to steal their technological devices from them. And so it is because of this kind of reality that we ask children to be on their guard. We ask children to travel in groups, not walk by themselves. We ask them to avoid taking shortcuts. We ask them to avoid listening to the thing that they put over their ears and they are distracted from the vehicle or traffic. These are some of the personal responsibilities that they can take at this time. We, as we speak, there is a challenge with the number of vehicles that are available to adequately transport the commuting public, including our boys and girls. So again, parents, it would have been said earlier, we encourage you to encourage your children not to just come out the house when they feel like 5 minutes before school start. But how do they get enough rest in the night to wake up early, to dress and come to school without loitering on the road? Because the greater the numbers of persons concentrated in a space in the peak time of traffic, it is greater the vulnerability to our exposure to the virus, but also the greater the risk in terms of being harmed by those who are intent in creating havoc in our nation. So these are some of the tips, parents, I encourage you to take at this time, understanding again that collectively we can make this difference. The boys and girls have a responsibility, our parents have a responsibility, and certainly the Ministry of Education has a major responsibility to ensure that our boys and girls return to school safely for in-person classes, and they get the best out of the educational experience at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Troop, for that comprehensive response. I mean, there's nothing more to add to that, Minister. That was well said. Yes. Parents, you've got the tips right there. You just have to make sure that you do your part in having those conversations. So as we are here gathered with you this evening for this conversation, we expect that you will have a further conversation with your child or children as we navigate this new experience going forward. I have several other questions. Ms. Thompson, go ahead.
What about the primary schools like grade 1 and 2 wearing masks for the entire day? All the children coming back in the class, some class has 31 or 41 students to a class. What are the protocols in place for this?
Okay. Thank you very much. That's a very good question. And I'm asking my parents, if you are able to access the bulletins that we send to our schools, Bulletin 33, 2022, you will see that we provided some reminders to our school leaders as to how to treat with these situations. Wearing of mask is not new to our school environment, be it the primary, infant, secondary level. We encourage that. It is supposed to be done to keep ourselves safe. What we have said to our principals is that we should just arrange mask breaks in a structured way. So we don't want our children to just randomly be taking off the mask in the classroom or in their different spaces on the school compound. It has to be structured because we still have to remember that we have a responsibility to keep ourselves safe. So our parents, this is the kind of conversation we're asking you to have with our students, that the mask wearing is very important. And Minister said it earlier, the sanitizing, the washing of hands, very, very important. So we have asked our principals to arrange the mask breaks in structured ways and also to maximize on the outdoors as best as is possible throughout the day. Minister, you want to jump in on that?
No. Oh. Just to support you, Dr. Troop, on that, we understand that for some children the mask is not as easy as for others. But again, as you heard Dr. Troop say, we're asking our teachers to have these structured mask breaks, or children will go outside, they're able to take off their mask and get some fresh air and then come back into the classroom. It's for their safety, it's for the safety of the other children in the classroom as well as the teacher. And because you're coming back into an environment in which we cannot have the physical distance that we're used to between the bench and chairs, we're going to have to compensate in other ways to offset the risk of not sitting 3 or 6 feet apart from each other. So those are some of the things we have to do in order to ensure that we continue to keep your children safe while they're in our care.
Thank you very much, Minister. Chantal, over to you.
Will the Google Classrooms still be utilized?
Group of classrooms. Oh, the group. Okay, yes. Technology will remain a permanent part of the education system. We will still have all the technology that you are used to in the virtual space. It will still be available. We will still as well have lessons on TV because the ministry has its own channels, so those will still be there. And of course, in terms of the learning kit, now you will be back in the, your children will be back in the face-to-face environment with their books, and they'll be in the classroom. The devices are there for your children to keep and care and to use them to augment what it is that they're learning in the classroom. And I'm sure our teachers will be engaging them for homework sessions after school. Might not necessarily be physically at the school. I'm sure there are many teachers who will be arranging virtual sessions to help students with various aspects of their work, with the math, with the science, and so on, because everyone recognizes that the 2 years have been really hard on our children in terms of their learning. So yes, the technology will remain. We will just be using it in a little bit different way than you're used to when we were in the mixed modality or we were in the 100% virtual world.
Thank you, Minister. I think Pierce wants to jump in a little. Yes, go ahead.
Well, just to add to what our minister said, we now have a technology in education policy that was approved. And so that's what the landscape will look like in the future. Technology is here to stay.
Thank you, Pierce, for chiming in on that. Chantal?
Okay, now we're heading over to Zoom. Marco Dean Stewart, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hi, good night, everyone. Good night, Minister Favor Williams and everybody else. Question, in regards to the 66 bus route, Minister, I know that the Hermitage community that falls under your constituency. However, the 66 buses, they run very, very, very bad. I'm no longer living in that community, so my child now has to take 2 buses to school. But because the 66 buses run so bad, I want to know for the JUTC person. I think this question is really for the JUTC person. What is going to be done about that? We need more buses on the route.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Cecil, can you come in here?
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the person who asked the question. The truth is that we are severely short on buses. As I indicated earlier, one of the things that we're doing is for those buses that are not currently functioning and that need, fewer parts, we're trying to reintegrate them back into the service. With respect to particular routes, though, I'm sure that there is a plan for particular routes that we're having challenges, 66 being one of them. I don't know how many buses would have been allocated to that route, but I do know that we are trying our very best to ensuring that where we have challenges, that we ensure that we put buses on those routes to mitigate the challenges that we're having. I just want to point out as well that it is obvious that we are short on buses, but at the same time, we're also saying to parents and to commuters that there will be delays. There's no bones about that. There will be delays. So we're asking you to come out early, ensure that you secure your buses, and be on your way either to work or to school. But you have to bear with us because we do have limited numbers of buses.
Thank you so much, Cecil, for that. So parents, you hear it there. Come out early. You have heard Mr. Toms making the appeal. We are also making the appeal. We need all hands on deck. It's not the ideal situation, so I'm asking you to just make the adjustment, and I'm sure a parent would just call in that Mr. Toms will make note, Minister, of that 66 route, and I think you have also done
I know.
so. So we are taking notes too as well. Let's go to the other question.
Sharika Hawes, please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Good night. The bus that runs from Old Harbor to Denby, will that bus be back on the road?
It's a good question, Sharika. Unfortunately, it probably would have been useful if we had somebody from operations. I can perhaps get your contact details and forward that information to you, but I am unable to respond in a comprehensive manner to you on that one. But we do have buses that operate in a very limited way in Old Harbor. What did you say, from Old Harbor to Spanish Town?
Denby, Clarendon.
From Old Harbor to Maypen, right?
Right. We do have, I think we had a limited number of buses in that region. I don't have the information right now where we stand on that, but perhaps Chantal could take your particulars and I get back to you with some information.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Troop, could I mention, Cecil?
Yes, Mr. Troop.
With the JUTC, Ministry of Education and Youth Partnership, we had 3 JUTC buses in those spaces transporting our boys and girls. It has materialized because of the partnership between the Ministry of Education and JUTC. Cecil, I hear the uncertainty, but I just want to assure our parents that the ministry is committed to continue that partnership and the financial support to underwrite the expense for those 3 buses to remain on that particular route, because it has served an important purpose of getting our boys and girls to school safely and on time. So we are prepared to continue that partnership, Cecil. Just for you to know that you will share that with your operations persons. Although I'm expecting them to ensure that is done, because it's a long-standing partnership.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. I will pass it on.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Troop, we'll just work to get that information out to our schools very early so that can be shared with our parents, because here we have a concerned parent. So we want to make sure that this is reactivated and the information is shared very quickly.
Mrs. Scott, please unmute your mic. Anna Walters Clark, you could go ahead and unmute your mic.
Good night, everyone. I'm sorry. I think that's a mistake. Sorry.
Okay, we'll move on. Nice to hear your voice.
Sanjay Wilson. Okay. Beverly Anderson. Rihanna Clark. Well, we do have a question from Facebook. What are the protocols put in place for the early childhood?
Okay. Want to take that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So as you know, we have given the instructions for all our schools to be open, and the Early Childhood Commission has been working, and Minister, I can tell you, they are active on social media far more than us. They have been in the field, they have been doing the corner talks, they have been working with that community. So all those schools are also being supported by the Ministry of Health. Those schools have to be inspected as well and be approved by the Ministry of Health for face-to-face. So that is an ongoing activity. A number of those schools are already approved for the reopening. So the Ministry of Health will continue to work with ECC to get the information out for those schools that have been given provisional approval and those that have been pending. So I'm going to ask the providers of those services to get in touch with ECC just for that kind of support. But for those that have been operating, the protocols are the same. You know, our ECC sent out a list reminding our parents of what to do, the washing of the equipment and the implements, parents not necessarily coming into the physical spaces all the time, but there's arrangement for drop-off and pick-up, you know, for the limiting of sharing of the things that the students work with. There are groups of students that are kept in a little group together to make sure that the intermingling is not happening. That is happening in the early childhood institutions as well. So I know the practitioners have been working with our parents, and to be honest with you, Minister, we have not had much objections from those parents. They have been working, they have been facilitative, they have been doing the drop-off. You know, sometimes they are anxious and they want to get into the space, but they understand the limitations at this time, and so they have been working with the practitioners. So the instructions are open for them too, to be back at school. Our infant departments here in the ministry, those schools are open. We have 437 of those schools, serving roughly about 8,000 infants. Those students are to be back in school because all our infant departments are open for school, for physical face-to-face. So please get in touch with your principals, get in touch with the providers of your basic schools or your early childhood institutions or centers. They will provide you with the guidance, but they are also open. And in fact, the daycares have always been open. We have been navigating the pandemic. That space has been made available for parents, especially for those who have to go to work. So those protocols continue to guide them, but get in touch with your principals or the owners of those institutions.
Okay, we have two more questions. Tanisha Richards, please go ahead and unmute your mic. Okay. Natisha Green. And one more, Yvonne Mattis. Please unmute your mic.
Okay, so we're not getting the persons to unmute. Minister, I think probably they just touched the raise hand feature very early when they got in. But we are still available for the discussion. But just some simple reminders. Very important, parents, you have to get in touch with your schools. If you did not get a chance to attend the PTAs, a number of our schools have had PTAs in the last week. If you did not get a chance to attend, please reach out to your teachers, your form teachers, your principals. During the pandemic, a number of our principals went ahead and create WhatsApp groups, and you are in those groups. If it is that you're not in a WhatsApp group because of a challenge, talk with your neighbor, talk with a friend. There's always somebody that you can call upon to get some information. We really would not want your students, your children to be home when they need to be in school. The adjustments are being made at the school level. We want every single Jamaican child back into school. That's where we are at this point in time. And we're really happy for that. And I know the students are really looking forward. So parents, that is one of the call to action. Get in touch with your schools. That's where the information is at this time. Minister?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Troop. I want to say to the parents, I know that there is quiet enthusiasm and expectation among our students, among our teachers, our principals, and I'm sure among our parents as well, to see all of their children back into the education environment, into the face-to-face environment. It's an important point in the transition through this pandemic. As you heard the health minister say earlier on, we have to learn to live with the pandemic. And so we need to continue to observe the protocols as outlined, especially given that in some schools, the physical distancing will not be able to be maintained in the classrooms. But I know you are ready. I'm sure you've been looking forward to this day when all of your children or your child can be back, getting up at a certain time, making it to school and meeting friends, interacting, doing some of the extracurricular activities that are available at school and so on. Again, in closing, I want to implore you to be as patient as you can be. Maybe I have to say, assume the patience of Job, because you are going to need it. Mr. Toms talked about just the limitations at JUTC for those of you who live in the KMTA. For those of you who are in rural areas, I know the journey to and from school is longer than we have in the city. And I know that the hassles that you may have sometimes getting your children to and from school. Again, we all have to exercise patience, and to the students, we want to say welcome back to all of them. But we know that during the next several weeks, they have to go through a re-socialization again because they're coming back into a structured environment that they, over the last 2 years, it didn't feel so structured to them as they were at school and they were in the virtual world. Safety is the key word in all of this. Wherever you are, whether you're on the school grounds or in waiting for your transportation, Mr. Troop gave a lot of advice in terms of how to be safe while you're out on the road, going to take your bus, your taxi. And parents, I want you to take this back to your children, talk with them, help them to understand. Sometimes we assume that they do, but just have them at dinner or in any other setting, just kindly bring up the idea of school and some of the expectations for your children. We are doing everything we can at the Ministry of Education and Youth to ensure that our schools are ready to receive the students. But again, I know it requires all of us to feel or understand and act in a collective way so that the education system will be successful for the rest of this year, for the rest of this school year and into the next. We look forward to continue the conversation with you. This will not be the last of the town halls. It will just probably be the beginning, because I know as we go through school, there may be other issues that come up that we need to address with you. We know that you will be here next time we call. So I wish everyone all the best. Be safe and speak with your children. Speak with them often. Answer their questions and exercise as much patience as you can with them and with the situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. I'm understanding that we have one more parent who is pushing one to get a question in. So we are going to take that question. So go ahead.
Schools implementing a shift system for the short term, and what support is the ministry prepared to give in this regard?
If we are against the schools
implementing shift system for a short term.
Okay. Well, the instruction at this point in time, our schools really have been using a number of strategies, Minister. The rotation in persons created, extended learning opportunities, extended operations, shifts and so forth, just to make sure that they could reach the students as best as possible. Now we have the opportunity of full face-to-face because the shift itself comes with some limitations. And so we really don't want to perpetuate that if we have this opportunity of operating our whole day schools. So that's really what the instructions are at this time, and that's why we're saying work with your schools. Minister indicated earlier that we have some shift schools. Those are established shift schools, and we have given them an additional 2 weeks to work through their challenges, to communicate with you so you can know fully when they will be going back to their normal operations, because they have to do a number of changes given their situation. They are beyond their capacities, as you know. You know, there's a classroom shortage issue and so forth. So they need a little bit more time to work that through with you. So we're asking you to just be patient with them. But we really would not want a normal school to be going into a shift situation given the limitations of that school operation. So that's not the approach at this time. We really want to have all our students back in the whole day environment where that can be accommodated. That's really the thrust at this time, especially in light of the, the learning losses that we have suffered over the period. And just to make a point, Minister, and I know Pace would want to come in on this, with respect to the extra lesson and the homework program. We're aware that over 10,000 students have registered already at the school level to participate in the extra lesson homework program. Parents, if you are listening, please speak with your principals and your teachers about this initiative. It's really an initiative of the ministry to provide extended learning opportunities for the boys and the girls. They have been robbed by COVID of their time on task, and some more than others will need this time. 4 hours per week, 2 hours each day for 2 days, parents, just to sit with their teachers in groups of 15 where the teacher can give the hands-on attention, where you may have our desire of special extra lesson for your child. We're not taking away that opportunity. We are just enabling, especially for those who are not able to fund this kind of support for their children. The ministry is responding to that. So you may be a parent out there and you have your homework program all set out already. You have a teacher who's working with your child. We don't want to disrupt that. This is to complement that. And as I said, we are asking for 2 days to work with those students, and the ministry will fund that. If it is that you want to do additional work, as a parent minister called in today to say that she wants to do additional work with her child and to ask of her teacher to do that. And this is why I'm making the point, parents, that we are not asking you to abandon those activities. This is really just to support what you are doing out there. If you have the resources to do additional or alternative arrangements, we support that. But for those parents who may not be able to afford any other opportunity of extended learning support and time on task, the ministry is providing that resource at the school level, and we are doing it in small groups. So those students who did the diagnostic test, parents, talk with your principals and your teachers about this test. They should share with you the results of these tests so you can understand what is happening to your child. If it is that the teacher is not able to share that data because your child did not sit that assessment, it is not too late. Because what we should be doing now is guided learning based on data. We don't want the children to just go back and start anywhere in the curriculum. It's about where they are now and where we need to get them as they continue on their learning journey. So parents, please maximize this opportunity. We have the face-to-face component and we have the virtual component. So we have 3 educational learning providers who are working with us. We have indicated to them that they can take up to 10,000 students across the country. So that's 30,000 students who can benefit from the virtual learning opportunity. One-on-one was working with all the high schools. So I want you to pay attention to that. You have an opportunity here to get to pass papers, to get to hands-on support in the virtual space for those who have the device. And you don't want to stay at school, but you want to go home and you want to log on and get this additional help. Your mommy may not be there, but somebody's in that space that is going to be compensated by the government to work with you. So this is really what is necessary now as we go back into the face-to-face. We have to make every decision, every possible chance that we have to get our students back where they're supposed to be, to treat with the learning losses that we have suffered throughout the pandemic. So I'm making that that appeal again, PS, as we strengthen the call to action. PS, any further call?
Oh, Dr. Troop, I think you said it very well, Minister, yourself. I just want to close off by saying that I think the concerns raised show that people are cautiously optimistic. They really are just saying, how is my child going to be taken care of and being safe at school? And I can assure you, the ministry has taken that into consideration. And I would encourage you, if you ever have to take a risk at this time, take a risk with sending your child to school. The learning loss is already too great. We just have to make up for it.
All right. Wonderful.
My words.
Thank you. Thank you so much, PS. You know, we couldn't close without getting your little last love there. And you have said it. If there's ever a time to take a risk, is now. And it's worth the risk to get our students back in school. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me just register my gratitude for you logging on and staying with us in this space. You know, PS, we had the Minister of Health made the time, Dr. Tufton, to be with us. And that's a part of the assurance that you have, parents, that the Ministry of Health is with us. This was not a random decision. This was an informed decision. And as you know, from the beginning of this experience, we have been working with the Ministry of Health because we're actually in a health crisis that has impacted our education system. And so this evening, we couldn't have this conversation without Dr. Tufton. So Dr. Tufton, I know you have left us, but in absentia, I want to express my gratitude for you coming on. Cecil, you have been here with us and you understand the importance of the information about operations getting out to our community. Let me just express our deepest appreciation here at the ministry for taking the time to share with our parents this evening. Thank you so much, Cecil. Mr. Troop, you are always with us, always ready. I know you are in the trenches. You are working with the providers. You are working with the deans of discipline, and you know those officers have to be out into the field next week, be in the transport centers, be at the gate, just to give all the support. We thank you so much for taking the time to share and to, of course, amplify the call for action. You did a tremendous job. And most importantly, our minister. Where would we be without her leadership, her guidance, her directives at this time? And I can tell you, parents, I must be honest, the minister insisted that she would have this conversation this evening because she understands the value of talking with you, of sharing with you. We started a series of conversations with our principals, and the minister was not satisfied. She said, Dr. Troop, we have to talk with our parents. So, Minister, let me register our deepest appreciation on behalf of our parents in the social media, for you always thinking of them, for you always wanting to be in touch with them, for you having that personal touch that we desire at this time, and I'm sure the parents are deeply appreciative. Thank you, Minister, for always leading the charge on that.
And let me just say to parents, we are here to welcome your children back on Monday morning. We would have spoken to all principals across primary and high school, and I can tell you, without a doubt, they are all looking forward to seeing your child or your children back in school on Monday morning. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but we're asking you to work with us because we know over time you will begin to see the benefits of your child being back in the physical environment. Thank you.
There you have it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you, and God bless Jamaica, land we love. Thank you.